Okay, Rilee, let's take a look at your essay. So, starting with the introduction, right away, this is a pretty short introduction, and I think you can add more, and I will talk to you about that in a moment. Your start of the essay is okay, and actually, before I start, let me just tell you, I put this in double spacing just so I could go through it easier with you. We'll talk about formatting later. I'm not dinging any of you on MLA format just yet. So, there are so many factors that go into mercy killings, but the end result is the same. For this one, you need a comma before the word but because this acts as a coordinating conjunction because you have two independent clauses. And I think mercy killing might. I'd have to think about that. That'll be fine how it is. So looking at this is an okay start to the essay. I think it could be more effective because this is a pretty decent sentence, but I think you could put something before it to make it a little bit more effective because what really brings out your essay is the end result is the same, which I think is a powerful statement. So I think if you added something here before to give more factors into what the factors are for mercy killings, and then also expand this thought a little bit on the end result is the same following, I think you will have a more effective introduction because three sentences isn't quite cutting it, so I think you could change that a little bit. And then right here, mercy killings are ethical because it supports the patient's wishes, gives a person a way out, and it is a way to end suffering without any more pain. So these two components of your close thesis are the same, gives a person a way out, and it's a way to end suffering. So we'll see how that works in the rest of your essay as we go through this. Right now, this is a pretty good thesis. My only concern is if this was beyond a 5-paragraph essay, this may not quite work because you have those two ways, these two components that are practically the same. So again, your introduction, one grammar concern, excuse me, which is that lack of a comma before the word but, and then thesis is good. You just need some extra length in the introduction. So as we move on from your introduction to your first body paragraph, let me start with the first sentence and then I will kind of take apart your first paragraph. So in Keith Schneider's 2011 article on Jack Kevorkian, he states that it was the patients that contacted him. So the problem here is we have what we call a vague pronoun with him being used here. So in this article, he states that it was. When we do this in writing, in Keith's article, he states, this is just kind of filler. Yes, it's on Jack Kevorkian, but the he states kind of gets the reader to assume you're talking about Schneider. And then so when you're saying Schneider stating it's the patients that contacted him, because the previous pronoun we assume references Schneider, this makes this confusing. I know as your audience member right now, because I signed it to you and gave you the article, that you're referencing Jack Kevorkian. But we have that vague pronoun, which can make it a little confusing there. Okay? And then as we go on, I think you just have too many ideas that are going on here. To make this this paragraph better with a better topic sentence, be a little bit more specific up here with it supports the patient's wishes because you're kind of lacking analysis. So if you start something with Kevorkian always had the patient's best interests at the forefront, that might be a better topic sentence. And then you move into these things because the patients give written consent, great. Given a few months, great. So you're using examples of what he did, even including the family. So this is okay, but you're lacking the analysis part for it. So this is all together, but talk about how in this case, mercy killings are ethical because there is a lot of autonomy that the patients have with it. It's not Kevorkian just being loosey-goosey and just killing people at a whim. There is a process that's behind it. So you need to take a few sentences to explain that analytical component. And then this part just has nothing to do with your first paragraph. So they're giving consent, and if that's what your content is for this paragraph, this needs to go. So many patients have terminal illnesses which are incurable. illnesses usually associated with death. Examples would be MS, Alzheimer's, and a more common one would be AIDS. So this is okay, just not in this paragraph because it doesn't fit in with what you have. So what you need to replace this with is your analysis about what these examples of Kevorkian doing this. I forgot where I was going with that, and I so sorry, I forgot how I worded that. So let me start over. So this part, replace it with analysis that goes back to your thesis on how it is ethical. And just another 2 grammar things I'm noticing. The spacing here is weird, and that is a grammar format concern I'm looking at. So if we backspace, it won't do it for me, but 1, 2, I don't know if that's going to be 1 or 2. I think you've got 1 space too far. I'm not sure. I can't really tell. But you've got 3 or 4 here, and then you have 1 space between sentences here. So you need to make sure that you're cleaning up that part as well. And the last thing is, I know this talks about Alzheimer's. I don't know if I talked about the other grammar concerns. So actually, let me start there. So I'm sorry if I forgot that. MS and AIDS. AIDS is commonly known as this, but a lot of people actually don't know what M is. So I would just spell that out the first way. And now that I think about this more, I don't really know why you're bringing AIDS in. I believe MS is brought up and Alzheimer's is definitely brought up in the articles, but this isn't really brought up in the Mercy Killing articles. So if you got this from a different source, that's great. I just need that to be clear because I don't think that's in the Kevorkian article. And then as we move on to the next body paragraph, you have some good word choice in here and some good things going on, but I think we're lacking the analysis component again. So many of these people are just a shell of who they used to be. So if we talk about something with terminal illnesses, going back to your thesis, gives people a way out and suffering without any more pain. I think if you started something and reworded these components to incorporate it into your topic sentence, it would be a little bit better here. But this sentence is pretty powerful. Many of these people are just a shell of who they used to be. And then you explain what their lives are kind of like it. And we get a little bit of analysis. When it really comes down to it, it's the people's choice anyways. Why do we get to judge their decision? And then when you reference of mice and men, this can work as a little bit of analysis. And then you pose this question at the part of the body paragraph. So the only concern I have with this evidence is you're not really backing up that it's a person's choice anyway, because you would have to talk about some of the perhaps the legality behind it. What are the legal repercussions? Why do they have a choice? Can one really choose to die? So you would need to incorporate it there a little bit. And then we do slip into that second person a little bit. And this is actually a really interesting question you pose after of Mice and Men, with George ending Lenny's pain to kind of save him. But I think for the analysis, you first need to explain and incorporate in here your position on it about how that could be a mercy killing and why that was the right decision to do. Because you're right, so he ended his pain before it even started. But that's more of an example. You need to take a few sentences to explain how that evidence ties back into Lenny's position. Maybe he's a shell of who he used to be. And I'm not a fan of the second person being used in the essay unless you're doing it as a hook or in your conclusion. And if you do end up being college bound, this will be something they will drill in your head that they will just tell you not to at all. But for this one, I will let it slide because I think for the context of what you have, it's a pretty good question. And it wouldn't work the same if you have it in the conclusion. So I'm okay with this being here, but you do need some more analysis as it comes through. Okay, so this last body paragraph, you briefly bring up the opposition. Some may argue that they are prescription drugs to make the pain bearable, but many patients do not want to be reliant on any drug for their own comfort. So, we're missing that comma before the word but. So that is a grammar concern because, again, we have independent clauses. sentences on their own, and then we have this conjunction that's thrown in there. So that is that. And then starting here, death by anesthesia is painless, which is why people describe it as a mercy killing. Google Docs and Word is accepting this with or without the comma, but I think you technically do need a comma here because one of the kind of tricks with the word which is if the sentence is unchanged, if you take out the word which. So if we said death by anesthesia is painless, is why people describe it as a mercy killing, makes the sentence a little bit awkward, so you may need a comma there. But I won't ding you on that one because that one's kind of a tricky one, and which and that are two words which are a little bit tricky, so I'm just going to leave that alone. So this is primarily what Kevorkian used for his 130 plus assisted suicides. You need to spell this out. So 130, you could say his over 130 assisted suicides or whatever it may be. And correct me if I am wrong. If you're getting this from another article, I will need to know because looking at the article, if I bring it up here, hold on, let me find it. If I look at, nope, 130. So he assisted in some 130 suicides over the next 8 years. You could probably just say 130 because when they say some 130, that means it's approximate. And I have a problem with the word primarily because it kind of implies that Kevorkian used other methods and he may not have used other methods. The article does imply that that was his method. And overall, this is not a great body paragraph because for the opposition to really be brought, you need to bring this sentence as your topic sentence and then go in to talk about how kind of the patient choices and how this is painless and why they do it. And that will, first of all, make your paragraph a lot better from the start. But then this other concern is this inclusion of Candy's dog. And your mice and men thing was good here, but this just seems to have no relevancy to me as I read this. So this kind of seems like it's placed awkwardly. I think if you place this here, this last sentence as your topic sentence, and then go into Kevorkian's status and what he did, this would be a lot more effective. And once again, we're missing this analysis component. Okay, and now we are at the conclusion. So let me start off with how you end your paper. Would you pull the plug on the most important person you have if they were suffering? Awesome. This is a fantastic question to leave your readers with because you do have, even though you lack the analysis, you have some good pieces of evidence that really ties this in. So this is a great question to leave it with. But other than that, I would say you should probably explain this one a little bit. The option for assisted suicide is like giving someone their life back. I definitely see where you're getting at, but for the sake of other readers, definitely take the time to explain that a little bit more. And then the only thing left is this is so a run-on sentence and is way too long, and we're missing that comma before the word but again. So people say it's ethical more than likely have a personal experience. Who it's unethical more than likely cannot understand what it's like to see someone you care about suffer every day. This is pretty hypothetical, and I can see where you're getting at with it, but the problem is, because it's your conclusion, this stuff is not as made evident in your body paragraphs up above, so this would need a little bit more explaining. Okay, Rilee, so this is a little bit longer, and you have one of the longer ones, and I apologize. I don't know how that happened. Probably just me stumbling over my words. But anyways, with your essay, overall, intro and conclusion, pretty decent. There's some things you can change, and you've got some good evidence, but you really need to incorporate that analysis and double check some of your grammar stuff. So hopefully this is helpful for you to see what you can do as you move forward.